All right, welcome back, everybody. Parapalooza Fall 2021. This is our final segment here.
Where did the time go,
Where
Keith?
the hell did the time go? I don't know. You know, we kind of need to give that away, huh?
Yeah, well,
Now
I
that
mean,
it's the end of the show.
it's pretty obvious, isn't it?
Give what away?
That the zombie's wearing a Truth About Beer shirt.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah.
I said that.
We had nobody's answered
But
that
nobody
in the comments.
mentioned it in the
Even
comments.
after I said it, nobody said it?
No,
Wow,
no,
people
nobody
are
said
weird.
it.
Unbelievable.
I was a little bit disappointed.
Thanks for paying attention, guys.
Styling even in
Jeez.
death, living death, or undeath.
The undead.
Unmitigated
Yeah.
hell.
Undead. I'm more impressed that you were able to do that.
Oh, it's easy.
Was it?
It's
Yeah.
a friend of his. He just asked him to wear it.
It wasn't-
It wasn't that big of a deal.
Here,
Jimmy,
wear this.
Jimmy, please. Put on my shirt.
Just wash it when you're done.
Next zombie shoot you have.
we should
Wear my shirt.
bring you guys up.
That's all right.
We can hear
Gotta
you.
figure out. Oh, we got two of us.
Oh,
on
look at
there.
that. Oh, double.
There we go.
We're
Look at
so
that.
much bigger
Well, I
than
think
you
we
guys.
need to
Oh, my
adjust that
goodness.
camera.
No, I
Did
think
it get
it's great.
bumped?
Nope, we look
I think it
fantastic.
got bumped a little bit. Go ahead, Joey. You got this.
Let me go. I'm shorter now. Yay, let's get this out of my face. There we go. I brushed
There
my
we
hair. I don't see that. All right.
Ah. So yeah, so we got Jack
That's
with
me.
us, and we got Dan Davidson with us from Aragon Stories, talking about mostly about reincarnation.
Yeah.
So you got to talk on the mic too.
I pull that mic down from your face.
Can't hear you.
Yeah.
Testing.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, put it in your face.
When you can taste it, it's right.
Is that what it is?
Yes. To answer your question, mostly about reincarnation.
Okay.
I kind of was surprised that I saw the time travel in there, but
Well, I threw that because of one of your books.
that's fine. We
so-
can talk about that at the end when I talk about
Well,
one of my
it
books.
feels like we've time traveled. I mean,
You guys did.
it just started like 2 minutes ago, and now we're at the end.
It was
I know,
actually 2
I know.
days.
That was
2
good.
days.
Well, have a nice life. Whatever.
All right, we'll turn you guys loose on it.
Away.
It's all you.
Wrong, guys.
Right.
Okay. Well, like I was telling Jack, my co-host there, I was searching the internet to find a better definition of reincarnation that I had saw before, but I wanted it in kind of simple terms. So I found one written by Tanya Hoy back in February 2017. I want to give her credit because I'm going to be pretty much quoting her, not verbatim, but pretty close. So this is what she said. Reincarnation is, upon the death of a body, its soul is sent to a spiritual domain where it lives on until it is returned into a new body. The soul never truly dies. It reincarnates over and over until it has learned all of life's lessons on earth and finally evolves into the highest spiritual state. I think it's pretty simple. I think everybody kind of knows that already, but I just wanted to kind of just read that so people understand exactly what most people think reincarnation is. It seems to me that there is a debate that always goes on, and I'm sure Jack will talk about that in a minute, but there's a debate. Is reincarnation real? Does it really happen? I don't believe it. I do believe it. I think that's going to go on like a lot of other things that we don't understand totally, including paranormal. I think there's always going to be doubters, and there's going to be people that are positive about it. So we'll talk about it tonight. I want to turn it over to Jack first because Jack's got a unique background with this. And I don't know if some of the viewers may remember we were on Truth About Beer a few weeks ago, and we did a reincarnation show there, which got a lot of attention, which we're grateful for. But a lot of it comes from Jack's enlightening people about his experiences when he was younger. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to Jack first. And then after he's finished, if there's any time left, I'm going.
That's a bold prediction. This guy don't shut up.
I'm going to talk about one case that I found that I think is unique. Of course, there's people that said it's a fraud, and just like I said, there's doubters. But I pulled this case up, and I think it's a unique case. So I want to talk about it a little bit. But first, like I said, Jack's got a lot of experience as a younger person with reincarnation itself. So, Jack, take it over.
Well, in its theory, I suppose. In its execution, I haven't necessarily experienced it firsthand yet that I'm aware. But no, for me, it was always, I guess, in my spiritual journey, if you call it that, it always seemed to be the most comforting of theories or theological approaches because it helped it helped me justify or explain the tragedies that happen in the world, the apparent injustices, or shortcomings. You know, you have people who are clearly smarter than others, people who are better looking than others, seem to have a leg up in the world, whatever, and all those things. They're really horrible things sometimes, but they're made equitable by karma and reincarnation, meaning that if you're not just one time around, you have the opportunity to come and you're going to experience more in another life. Every life is different, and intentionally so, because the ultimate goal, as we were taught in the church I attended, was essentially, they called it Christ consciousness. So being all children of God, as Christ is a child of God, we are too. So reaching that same level through knowledge, and you can only have knowledge with experience, and that's what life is about. It's using your knowledge experience together, because you can know everything, and until you actually experience those things, or firsthand, that it's a different sort of thing, if that makes any sense. Like if you read a book on rebuilding carburetors, but you never built one, it's sort of useless knowledge. So the life is putting into practice the knowledge that our souls have. And just like souls are energy, as far as I'm concerned, and it seems to me that energy, as we know from a scientific standpoint, can't really be destroyed and just kind of change forms. So it makes sense to me that a soul would be eternal. How it moves from one to the other, I really don't know, but it always seemed to be the fairest, most palatable of the outcomes, because when it came right down to it, the heaven and hell sort of one life, one trip around the globe kind of thing just seems so tragic in so many ways. You have people who don't live but a couple years, if that. And how in the world does that sit well with others? It doesn't sit well with me anyway. It was like, I've always found that to be the most just awful thing. It's like, you guys think that your baby's dead and burning in hell because it didn't read the right book or go to the right building? Like, to me, that was insanity. But I know there's a lot of people that they're born and raised and have those sort of theological beliefs, and it's like so crazy. But anyway, I don't know if that's what you were looking for, but
Well,
that's what I got.
well, based on what you said, if a person dies young like that, an infant or something, do you believe that? Because in some religions, I think it's Buddhism, but I'm not 100% sure on this, but do you believe that it's possible that the younger you are when you die, the closer you are to that perfection, where you're going to get that higher spiritual state like this lady was talking about?
Well, that to me has always seemed like kind of a cop-out excuse. It's like, oh, so you were a baby, so you barely out, so you just get a free shot. If your life is supposed to be what defines your eternal, destination in those same religions, meaning that if you have a life full of sin, then you'll have eternity of suffering. But because he got run over by a car, it doesn't make any sense to know he's just going to go right on up. He gets a free ride. Why? It doesn't make any sense. If there's a being that had something to do with us being created, that cares for us all equally, that is the most inequitable thing I've ever heard of in my life. You get a chance, you get 50 years to go screw things up and piss me off. He died within a year, so he's up here, just in. It doesn't make any sense to me. Not there's any sense to be made of it,
but if you go by what she's talking about in this particular definition, you do keep coming back until you get to that point of perfection.
Right.
So,
and that's,
so
you
the
have
person,
to.
right. But the certain person who's dying at an infant's age would certainly have reached that point in perfection where they earn that spot, so to speak, in eternal peace.
Oh, I see. So you're saying if that person of infancy had been reincarnated previously.
Right.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
And again, it makes that sort of thing justifiable. Without reincarnation, that to me, that's tragic and unfair and all the rest of it. But reincarnation makes that sort of thing like, okay, I can deal with that. I can accept that, because we don't know where that person was in their journey. And maybe they were at the end. Maybe they didn't need more. Maybe they needed to experience that particular part of life and dying young. Who knows? And the real fun rabbit hole of all of this is that we don't get any answers. I can claim to know a million things, and doesn't mean I do. And if nobody believes me, great. If I write a book and it lasts for 50 years, it'll be considered a religion. So, what does it amount to? Not a whole lot, just, whatever brings you comfort, I suppose. And that's what it is for me, is like those sort of things, they bring me comfort.
You think that's why so many people are starting to lean towards believing in reincarnation, because it gives them comfort knowing that this is not over when it's over?
I don't know that it's the case that more and more people are believing in reincarnation, but if that is the case, I would say that kind of people want to feel, I don't know, happier about it or more comforted or whatever it would be, because I know that there's a lot of, the interesting thing was the church that I went to was a Christian and Hindu mix, so they accepted Christ as the savior that he is in Christian theology, but they also adopted a lot of the theories and things involving Krishna and a lot of other gurus, because there have been many others, and just made this sort of amalgam that is hard to take if you have grown up very traditionally or very staunchly in the sort of monotheistic idea, because it flies in the face a lot of that.
Well, because so many people today, and I'm not going to generalize this to the point where I insult somebody, but so many people today are shying away from religion, be it Christianity, Judaism, whatever it may be. People are not going to churches frequently. They're not participating in the formalities of religion so much as they used to do.
Yeah.
So these people may be very likely to start looking at something like reincarnation as a hope of something beyond today. That's what I guess I was leaning at, because so many people have lost faith in, so not necessarily God, but in what brings you to God. And I think that they ask themselves a lot of questions, and they find that reincarnation gives them a comfort that know that, you know what, when I die this time, I'm not going directly to hell.
Right.
I got a shot at this again. And I think that helps too. I don't think it's, like you said, you don't know what the numbers are. Like, and I don't either, Jack, to be honest with you. I don't know how many more people today believe in reincarnation than they did 10 years ago. But I do know, I mean, I'm talking about in the United States, but I do know worldwide it has increased. I don't have the numbers, but I know from reading, it definitely has increased. So I'm just wondering if this is becoming popular because of losing faith in organized religion.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, organized religion, there's, people see the flaws over and over again and recognize that the people at the tops of those religions are just people, and so you can't, once you kind of lose that faith, it's really hard to get back. And for me, it's difficult in, again, accepting. This is, I don't know, I'm going to go on a limb here.
Go ahead.
The biggest thing for me is the idea of God as a conscious singularity that has intent and feelings like we do. To me, makes this world just completely impossible, because we have ego, we have thoughts, the idea of that basic God that wants you to love him. He's not giving you anything but life. I give you life, I give you free will, and that's it. And you better do it right or you're going to burn. That's insanity to me, in my opinion. I've never seen God as a single consciousness. My feeling with reincarnation, karma, and God, as it were, that's the easiest word, or the easiest way for human beings to accept the fact that we're all part of it. Whatever the energy is outside of this body, that to me is God. So it's everything, it's existence, and we're all part of it. And how that all works together and you break it down, I don't know. That just makes the most sense to me. So when you leave this body, your energy, whatever form it's in, goes somewhere else, whether it's another body, another life, another universe, whatever. It's all part of, for me, a collective. Because to think that there's any thought, any singular intentional thought behind us is, again, it just seems really weird. And I can't understand it. I wish that I was one of those guys who read the book and said, oh yeah, that all makes total sense to me. But it just didn't.
I'm not sure anybody says that when they read the book.
No, I don't know if they do or they don't. I feel like there's a lot of people that are just all in 100%. What they told me is right. And I would never question it, because it makes me feel bad if I question it. So I've got to do this. And it's like, Christianity made it really easy, because you didn't have to follow a bunch of rules. Only rule you had to follow was you accept Jesus Christ as your savior. That was it. You didn't necessarily have to be a good person all the time. You didn't necessarily have to do everything right. Just as long as you ultimately made that one decision, you were given the key and you're in. And so a lot of religions pretty much all of them, including the one that I went to, have this very humanistic quality of requirement. And I don't know that it never set well with me that there's anything that's requiring us to do stuff without any guidance, because we really have no guidance except for what we've come up with amongst ourselves.
But isn't that called faith?
Absolutely. And that's 100% one of the easiest things to not have to defend. And again, this is where I come from with all this.
Right.
It's really hard for me to just go, yep, I believe. I can say it, and you guys all hear me say it. And if I stand by that my entire life, all you guys might believe it. And there might not be zero truth in that. What's in my head, if God is God, as anybody talks about him, he knows what I actually think. So why do I go to the building on Sunday when I don't want to be there? I don't want to hang out with those people. I don't like what they do. Whatever the case may be, I think a lot of people go through the motions, because I can't remember who said it, but there have been multiple people I've heard say, essentially, it's better to live as though there is, right? Just in case that happens to be the case. If you live your life not believing in God and he happens to be real, then you'll pay a price for that. But as long as you go ahead and pretend like he is and act as if, and then that'll be okay. That seems to me disingenuous. And if I was in charge, I wouldn't want that. Like, just in case you're right. Again, I don't know anything. These are the things that make sense to me over the course of my life. And I had a friend when I was younger tell me, well, what are you going to do when you're at his foot and he's there to judge you and tells you, that you didn't do this and that. And it's kind of like, well, if that's the case, it's sort of his fault. He made me, gave me this brain, this whatever it is. Why it is that other people heard all the stuff that I heard, they were all in, didn't have any problems with it, and I still had questions. Am I dumber than they are? Am I just, what is wrong with me? And again, if we're in that situation of being at the gates and being judged, it's kind of his fault. I had nothing to do with my creation, right? Unless I did, in which case I'm part of that collective. I'm part of that energy. I'm part of God. We all are. And that does give us agency and accountability. That sits better with me than the idea of a single consciousness having anything to do with us.
You're getting very deep.
Sorry, it happens.
And it's not really where we want to go.
It's only an hour show. So let's talk about reincarnation story you got.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I don't know how we got to that point. Maybe it's my fault.
You ask me questions and let me go, man. That's what happens.
I don't know how you got on that, where, I think my point that I was trying to make before we get into this one case we want to talk about, I think the point I was trying to make is because people are so confused with what's going on in the world today and all the worries and all the trauma that happens today, people still have faith, but people are starting to question things more. And if they can find comfort in something else, in this case, reincarnation, they may very well be going in that direction. That was the point I was trying to make. All this other stuff, I really did want to get into.
You don't have to get into it. The reality of it is, I agree with what you're saying. And it is, I think, one of the reasons why it becomes a more popular theory. But it's also one of the reasons why more and more people are falling out of religion altogether, and why we see this absolute descent in society as far as the way people behave. And I don't think that you need religion to have morals, but clearly the lack of religion and spirituality in people's lives is having an effect on our world as a whole. A lot of kids,
well, people have to fear something, though, Jack. That's why we have laws. You have to fear something, or you have chaos and anarchy all over, which we have anyway. But I'm saying we'd have even more of it if we didn't have laws and regulations and things to keep reminding us that we're human and we're supposed to behave a certain way. And that's what the 10 Commandments does too.
Right.
Without getting into religion again. But I'm saying,
get on that one if you want.
No. It's just a point that there's rules and laws that civilize us. If we don't pay attention to them, what are we then?
I can agree with you to a certain point, but I'm also one of those people that unfortunately believes that it doesn't come from religion necessarily or from a point of authority. It doesn't have to. I think that we're capable, not necessarily that we're prone to, but we are capable of being decent beings without having the threat of death or damnation or threat in general. I think that we all know what's good inherently. Does it mean that we're all going to do it? Of course not. But for me, I see that as religion has fallen off, morality seems to have fallen off as well. And you see all the things that I won't name by name because people get freaked out. But the reality of it is that societies that have failed before, you see the rise of deviant behaviors and things like that. And those are the downfalls of society. And the more acceptance that we have of things that weren't accepted before, the further down that hole we go. And that's sort of a human reality. Historically, I think we can even see that Romans, as they went further down into that deviant life, they fell.
Sure.
And I think you can see it happening with us too. So, it's maybe on a grander scale, and maybe feels a little more in your face because all the information is so accessible. But, I hate to get deep with you, but the reality of it is these are deep things.
Well, that's why we're going to get off of it. But again, your theory is not something that can be proved, because you're saying that people could follow the rules without being told to follow the rules.
Right.
And everything would be peachy cream.
No.
It doesn't work that way, not in reality. And that's where you and I differ. I think you need rules in place to keep people civilized. But let's go.
I can agree. I can agree with you.
Okay.
Can I say one thing? I was going to
you're
type
allowed to
it,
say
but I'm
anything.
like, I'm not going to bother typing when I can just talk in the microphone. So, I think both of you are on point when it comes to that. In a way, I think if we look back at talking about religion again, a faith in a religion in our past has shown immorality and some pretty horrific things through the name of religion. So, if you look now at what's going on in the world, I think you have these two different sides of the aisle. You have, your agnostics or your atheists that don't believe in, and then you have all the religious people out there. So I think maybe the belief in reincarnation may be kind of that common ground starting to come together. I don't necessarily believe in a religion, but I want to believe that there's something else out there. There's something after this life.
Right.
So maybe that's where that's starting to come together, because you have the polar opposites. There's got to be a middle ground somewhere. So, I mean, I've always believed in the fact that you can't have morality without a faith, but I start to see that, Joey's always brought up really good points, and it made me think, look at the Crusades, look at, everything, a lot of things in the past based on religion has done some pretty shitty things.
Oh,
Right.
absolutely.
So, I think that's why you might be seeing that turn now, because we've gone so polar opposite when it comes to religion and beliefs, that you're starting to see it come together in the idea. And I credit the paranormal world for this, bringing more light to paranormal activity and what goes on in life beyond us. The hell was that?
That was my
Oh, I
fault.
was gonna say I heard a big
My
bang.
testicles fell out of my shorts.
I think that may be where the immersion of the faith in reincarnation is coming from.
I think you're absolutely.
That's just
right.
my that's just
no.
my thought.
I think you're very much right. But the thing that makes it hard is because it doesn't really. There's no definitive proof one way or the other.
Right.
Like the Crusades and all those things, were those was it because religion was awful, or was it because people can be awful? And whether they're fighting about who their God is or what candy bar they like better. Like people can kill each other over the most ridiculous things.
Right.
So again, my whole thing is I don't think that as beings we're incapable of decent moral behavior without religion any more than we're incapable of evil when it's gone. You know what I mean? Like people
Right.
do awful stuff, not necessarily because they don't believe in God or because they do. I don't think that they're one and the same, and I don't think they require each other. I think that all of it is very, very difficult to prove, and even more so if you don't have that innate or that just kind of born in you ability to just follow that. Because again, religions, like it or not, and you can tell me about the words in red and all that crap, it's stuff that we made up. Straight up. Was it brought to you by God? Maybe, or not. Who knows? Because he hasn't said anything about it to me, except for in meditation. So times that I've had religious experiences in my life where I felt a connection, where I felt a Christ connection. And then later in life, I discovered drugs and felt the same shit. So I don't know.
So
Which
that really
one?
confused you. Then.
It's incredibly confusing. It
Right.
messes your brain up because once you have understanding that, oh, it's all signals in here. Everything you feel, think, experience is processed in here. So did it come from a higher power or did it come from my brain? I don't know, because it's the same.
Right.
In deep meditation, I had intense religious experiences that I don't know how to define. I didn't know how to define. But at the time, it was God. I knew that. And then later, I didn't. So, and people who have not had those experiences can't possibly understand. And I'm not trying to discount anything that those people believe, because it's my experience. And yes, my relationship with God is my own, whatever that may be. And my relationship with God is that if he is a single consciousness that has anything to do with the way this world operates, I don't like him.
Right.
Because I think there's a lot of stuff wrong. So it makes more sense that I have some accountability and some skin in the game, that I'm part of the collective that makes up what I would call God.
And that's your faith.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you managed to get back on it again too.
Hey.
All right. Let's back to sorry. I just wanted to bring out that point.
Oh,
Go back to reincarnation.
Thank you, Keithy. Tell us your story.
I want to talk about one particular case. It's a girl named Barbara Collin. She believes she's the reincarnated soul of Anne Frank. Now, most people have heard of the book or the movie Diary of Anne Frank, I think. Okay. It's a story of a 13-year-old German girl of a Jewish heritage, Anne Frank, who penned a journal while hiding in an attic with her family in Amsterdam, Netherlands in 1942 to avoid capture and imprisonment by the Nazis. Anne carefully documented the happenings every day while hiding in the attic from day one, July 6, 1942, until the last day, August 1st, 1944. On August 1st, 1944, the family was discovered hiding in the attic and transported to a concentration camp. Anne succumbed to typhus while in prison at the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp in 1945. Barbara Collin was born in Sweden in 1954. She has written and published 10 volumes of poetry and prose. Her first collection of poetry was written when she was 12 years old. She has also worked as a mounted policewoman, but it's her early life that is to me the most compelling. Ever since Barbara was a little girl, she dreamed of another life. The dreams were often frightful, and she would wake up screaming and shaking. Barbara had the same horrible dreams for as long as she could remember. She told her mother and father that her name was not Barbara, it was Anne. Her mother dismissed it as a childhood fantasy. Barbara continued to have the dreams and struggled with the feelings she was living two different worlds. I just want to post a picture of Barbara and Anne Frank up here. And I don't even normally, and I think Jack will agree with me, that reincarnation doesn't mean you're going to look like the person you've been reincarnated from. And I think it's very, very rare that happens. But when I look at this picture of Barbara and Anne Frank next to her, I see something in it. Now, it could be just me wanting to see it, but I see, at least in the eyes and the nose, a very similar person in the two of them. Now, again, I'm not saying that makes this a true reincarnation. I'm not saying that at all. It just made me wonder a little bit, so I dug in deeper. Barbara was convinced her name, like I said, was Anne Frank. She couldn't understand why her parents kept calling her Barbara. She believed they were not her real parents, even though they insisted they were. An interesting fact, Barbara had no one else to talk to and continued to insist that she wasn't who she said she was. At this time, Anne Frank's Diary of a Young Girl, published in 1947, had only been translated into a few languages, but definitely not Swedish. There was no actual date of publication in Sweden, but it's believed to be in the late 1950s. Over the years, the two lives merged together, and Barbara insisted that her real father was coming to collect her. By the time she was 6 years old, her parents were so concerned that their daughter was crazy that they decided to take her to a psychiatrist. Barbara refused to share any of her dreams or thoughts of reincarnation with the doctor. She was afraid that she would be taken away, so she kept quiet. Barbara started school at the age of 7. She soon discovered her talent for writing. She began to write down her memories, but always threw them away, not wanting others to be able to read it. She wrote her first book of poems, like I said, at age 12, that was published as The Man on Earth. Barbara hadn't written anything about her being a reincarnation of Anne Frank, purely because she had started to feel silly and slightly ashamed to think that she had told everyone that she was somebody else. But after Barbara started school, she realized that Anne Frank was a real person. Frank's diary had been published in 1947, but was only then beginning to become popular. Barbara realized that it was no longer smart to go around saying that she had been Anne Frank. At the age of 10, Barbara went on a trip around Europe with her parents. This is what starts making me wonder a little bit. Her parents decided to take in all the sights of one of the houses, including one of the houses where Anne Frank lived in Amsterdam. Barbara's parents called for a taxi, but Barbara suddenly turned to them and said, "We don't need a cab. I know exactly where we are and how to get home." Her parents were startled. And how do you know this? They wanted to know. And because they'd never been there before, and they know she was never there before. But Barbara just turned to them and quietly said, "Let me just show you the way." Her parents didn't know what to think, but they said, okay. They started to walk to the house. They went on crossing roads and turning corners until Barbara said to them, "It's just around the next corner." And she was right. As they entered the house, Barbara was heard to say, "They have changed the steps outside." Her parents didn't know what to say when they entered the house, but Barbara began to get really horrible feelings. This was her dream. The atmosphere was close, and she felt the tightness in her chest. The dreams were suddenly real and right in front of her. They entered the room where Anne Frank had lived. Barbara was terrified. Her hands were cold and clammy, and her mother believed that she was ill. She wanted to take her outside, but Barbara said no. She wanted to see it. She wanted to make sure everything was the same as she remembered, but the feelings were getting worse. She noticed that Anne Frank's picture was still on the wall, and she excitedly told her parents, "Look, the pictures are still there." But there were no pictures there. "What are you talking about?" the mother wanted to know. "The pictures were there. I know they were," Barbara replied. So her mother walked over to one of the men who worked there and asked if there had been pictures on the wall. The man replied, "Yes, but they temporarily been removed while they were doing some refurbishing of the building." Her mother realized that Barbara had said something that was true. She hugged her and told her that she understood, and you're not alone anymore. She was convinced that Barbara knew something. Barbara decided to wait outside. On her way to the front door, she suddenly saw a man in a green uniform. Now, I'm not sure what this means. I took it as possibly a German soldier, but I'm not sure that's what they meant. She cried and ran over and only to fall over the steps. When she turned around, he was gone. In fact, he had never been there in the first place. It was just a flashback. Barbara's mother went on to become a spiritual churchgoer, but her father dismissed it all. He didn't want anything to shake his safe world. The most compelling proof that Barbara is Frank reincarnated comes from Barbara's meeting with Anne Frank's cousin, Buddy Elias, in 1995. In addition to being an actor, Buddy starred in Love Boat, Crime Scene, and Magic Mountain. But Buddy was also the last living relative of Anne Frank. He had heard about Barbara through her publisher, though at the time she hadn't yet written her story. Buddy wanted to meet her, even though he didn't believe in reincarnation. He was curious to meet this woman, going around telling everybody she was Anne Frank. Buddy invited Barbara to dinner. When she appeared at the door, they stared at each other for a moment, embraced, and cried. They sat for a couple of hours and talked. Later on, when the newspapers asked him, "Do you believe that Barbara is the reincarnation of Anne Frank?" he answered, "Yes." The more I researched this reincarnation case, the more I believe it could be true, because unless Barbara's mother and father got their hands on a copy of Anne Frank's diary and read the whole book to her by the age of 2, there cannot be another explanation. But what child of 2 would be able to take in all that information? I don't know. It's a case. I listened to a couple of her short interviews on the reincarnation, and she's very believable. But again, that doesn't mean anything either, because other people have claimed to be reincarnated, and people have come along and blew holes through the whole thing. There have been people that said she's a fraud, but from what I see, most people believe her story. So I leave that to everybody here. You heard what I just read to you. You saw the picture. I personally think that she believes, at least, that she is a reincarnation of Anne Frank. So what do you think, Jack?
Oh, I no doubt that she believes that. The thing I always struggle with with the stories of people who claim to know who they were, it seems like, I guess it falls under sort of empathic or psychic abilities to some degree, because it's not useful knowledge, for if there's a path and if there's a journey that we're on and there's an end goal, how is awareness of your previous life, especially one as public and tragic as Anne Frank's, how is that knowledge useful? Assuming that there's an ability or somehow that it was a decision that she's allowed to know that stuff. I feel like if we're doing multiple lives, for whatever reason, we don't get knowledge of the previous ones we had. So on occasion, we have these stories pop up where it seems that somebody was here before and they have some awareness of where they were, who they were. And those sorts of things are fascinating. But in the grand scheme of things, whatever that may be, it's almost just more confusing than anything. It's like, why would I know that? How, I know where I lived. I remember my family. I remember these places. Well, okay, cool.
But I know what you're saying, but you notice with most of these cases, not all of them, there are a few exceptions, but in most of these cases, these children are like between the ages of 2 and 5.
Incredibly young.
And by the time they're 10 or 12, they've lost all total memory of it.
Right.
So that's what makes me wonder. I mean, maybe there's a glitch in the system, so to speak.
Yeah.
And people are born again and reincarnated again. And for a short period of time, some of that memory stays with them.
That would make sense to me.
And it pulls away eventually, probably because you're fighting it yourself and you don't want it. So eventually you just forget the whole thing.
Yeah.
But when you're young, like she was, and so many other young kids are, it's quite possible. It's sort of like it stayed with you long enough for you to be able to express it in some way or another.
Yeah, it makes sense to me that, if you're closer to that point, that you still have some residual memory, energy, whatever that is, that allows you to know those things. But yeah, if you get older, if you get into adulthood and you still have any clear knowledge or memory of past lives, that's where you really start to get into like, wow, that's got to be hard to deal with. Like if I knew who I was, like no questions, again, on that level of faith, of pure faith, like I don't care what you tell me, I know that I was that person. I know that I lived in that house.
Right.
I know those things. That would be, I mean, forget about what it does for you. Like people aren't going to be like, oh yeah, okay, cool. You were that guy, right on. I mean, it's going to bring you ridicule. It's going to bring you all sorts of extra trouble. So again, it's one of those things that exists. It seems plausible, but certainly doesn't have any utility as far as I can tell. So I don't deny that those people are or were who say they were. I'd love to say that it gives me, I don't know. It's yeah. I mean, it kind of does, but it kind of doesn't, because I also know people are full of crap. You know what I mean? So there's that part where,
well, that's the problem.
Right. Because the verifiability of the 2-year-old having all this knowledge, there's only a couple of people that are going to have the ability to actually verify those things. And they're usually people that are older and that are adult and that may have motivations. So again, we always get, for me anyway, I always get stuck in this circle of somewhere along the line, there's a person involved with its information train that probably or very likely has ulterior motives that aren't about bettering humanity. So when it comes to the information of, oh yeah, my kid knew who he was. He knew he was a World War II pilot back in the day, whatever, if that's coming from him at 2 and I witnessed it, cool. I can verify that. Mm-hmm. Beyond that, it always just gets into that sort of like humans are kind of dicks. And
well, you're saying that some people are motivated to get that fame and that short time fame,
or good God,
at the expense of their kids.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we see that all the time, that people will sell their kids, throw them right under the bus for some bucks. Doesn't mean everybody's going to do it. But I mean, those are tangible, real examples and real things that we see, is people being awful for their own purposes. And yeah, sometimes putting kids and other people that you'd think they'd care about in the way. So that again, it sort of clouds my ability to have that pure belief or faith or whatever it is
I-
because
I
there's
would-
people involved.
I would tend to agree with you on that. The only commonality that I see in listening to these stories and some of the stories that you brought to light, most of these where children recall at a very young age their past life, most of those lives ended tragically. It wasn't
Right.
just a, normal death where they died from old age or
Yeah.
disease. It was a tragic death
Well,
that
except-
seems to carry on.
He had at least one where it was the pilot.
Yes.
That was a pretty normal life.
Yes.
You just
Yeah.
happen to remember it. So
Yeah.
not to discount it. I think that the ability to carry that information would be enhanced by how intense the
Their
end of
death
that
was.
life was. Yeah.
Right.
But again, it's just for me, it's those little nuggets, and it falls in the paranormal sort of realm in that whatever those little treats are, whether it's a video evidence or witnessing a UFO or knowing who you were in a past life, these are all little things that are for you, that how you can use them to better your life is really the key.
Mhm.
Because trying to share them with any real impact or validity to me seems kind of futile. Things that I've experienced that were really intense, that are completely unverifiable, unduplicatable, those are my little things.
Mm.
And I love those things, but sharing them is can be hard, especially if you don't have pictures or anything like that, but it's
easy to dismiss.
clearly, I think, way too much. So if you ever wonder what it's like to be stuck in a Ferris wheel that's going 300 miles an hour, it's in here.
Wendy's question, I think, has to do kind of with near-death experiences.Maybe what do you think about people who pass, go to heaven, and return to talk about it and what they saw?
Are you talking about what they saw in heaven? Where they saw the light, the tunnel, and went to
The
heaven?
near-death
Is that what we're
experience.
talking about?
Yeah, I think
Near-death
it's
experience
near-death.
feelings. Yeah.
I think if they believe it, and so many people have experiences, especially on an operating table or near, like you say, near-death experiences, I believe it.
And nearly identical experiences, and thousands of them, thousands and thousands upon thousands.
I think it's very possible, and I believe it. Call me stupid, call me dumb, but I believe it.
Oh, it's. I don't think it's stupid or dumb at all. I mean, it's a shared experience that is verifiable.
Mhm.
Now, you want me to shit on it for you?
Well, before you do that, I was going to say we have somebody in our family who did die a few times and was brought back.
That's right.
And I've never heard her speak of
No, never.
any type of experience she had, which
Yeah,
is interesting.
That is very interesting.
Unless
that
she
is
just
very
keeps it to herself and doesn't
Well,
want to
because
share.
because what good does it do to share it? I
Right,
mean, if you're
right.
that type of person,
Well-
pragmatic, you might just go, "Why would I tell them?"
I'm
not
not
gonna
sure
believe
she
anyway.
remembers because she was in a serious car accident. She flatlined 3 times in the ambulance.
Wow.
So and she was in a coma for over 30 days. So I'm not sure where that all plays in with that. It might be a little different. I don't know. Or maybe she just holds it in, doesn't want to share it with anybody. I don't know.
I've always been very curious of the coma thing because, like, just going under anesthesia is freaking mind numbing. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
count to 10, 10, 9, I'm out. Then I'm waking up. But you got some orange juice. I'm like, oh, we're going to have surgery. Like, you're done. Like, it was instantaneous. And it was hours of just gone. It's time travel and a half. I'm like, how the hell is that possible? So the idea of comas, like, how absolutely terrifying would that be to be like, yeah, you've been asleep for like 10 years. Excuse me, what?
Yeah, poor Rick Grimes.
Dude. Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, and there's a lot of that happens. And I think, wow, how much has that got to suck?
And what kind of experience do they have when they're
Yeah.
in a coma?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think for the most part, I haven't had talked to a lot of people out of comas, but I can only assume that it's similar to the anesthesia of the instantaneousness of, something happened. I went to sleep, then I woke up and I'm like, oh, where am I? Well, it's 10 years later and a lot of shit's changed.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, that's got to be unbelievable. Unbelievable. Is it possible that it's
That's an interesting thought.
Well, of course. I mean, and that's to me what all this amounts to is that, yeah, the possibilities, because we haven't even scratched the surface of, parallel universes and things like that, and just quantum realities like that are, a lot of people believe in those things too. So is it possible that on a frequency level, your energy that is yours, that also may exist in every other plausible, feasible, reasonable outcome of life is happening somewhere, that those frequencies are crossing and you might be getting information from each other?
that's what kind of what Vinny's point is. The theory of why a spirit remains is dying tragically and quickly. Does that energy find a child who recalls that life? And as that child ages, is it possibly, I think it's moved on?
No, I think mobbed on's pretty
Is
dope.
it
Spirit mobbed on, yo.
Spirit moved on.
And absolutely. I mean, and again, I love the thought process, and I love sharing these ideas. And I hope everybody understands that that's what this is about for me is sharing the ideas and the thoughts that I have. I don't claim to know any of this shit, and I don't claim that anybody's wrong. What I'm saying is these are things that cross my mind and that fit in the little puzzle pieces that go here and that bring me comfort to some degree. It's not because I think I'm any more right than anybody else is, because at the end of the day, we can walk out that door, get hit by a commuter train, and doesn't mean shit. So don't please take it with a grain of salt and understand that I'm just sharing information. And I hope that's what we're all trying to do, because at the end of this, we don't really know what there is going to be. I hope that it's all a big party and we're all get to see each other again, but I don't know. And I'd love to tell you I have a deep faith that that's the way it's going to be, but I don't.
Well, I think the biggest thing I get out of this whole thing is that when you're 2 years old or 3 years old and you experience these things, it seems to be that's the norm for most of these cases, reincarnation.
Right.
And by the time they're 10 or 11, they've lost all memory. That makes me believe that there is possibly something to a new birth with old memories. I don't know if it's true, like you. I don't know if it's true, but I think it's very possible. I know it sounds crazy, but I don't see why a new baby that's born could not retain some memories from the past that they can recall at the young age of 2 or 3. Again, start losing it from then on until they get to a point where they block it out totally, or they just lose the memory totally.
Right.
I don't know that, okay? But that's what I think about it, and that's why I think reincarnation is a strong possibility.
I agree. And what's interesting, that theory, or as I was speaking earlier, of Christ consciousness, and Christ consciousness, that what the church I attended believed as was the ultimate goal for our souls, our spirits, would give you that open door to all that information that your soul was aware of. So little bits of it coming with you, maybe as a result of you getting further in your journey. And so whatever that purpose has, whatever purpose it has, again, don't have any answers for, but Christ consciousness would be the totality of your soul's experiences. So all those lives would ultimately be your information. Again, what's it do? I don't know. You get to the third level of Qbert, who the hell knows?
Well, that's what I'm saying. If you've been reincarnated, let's say 10 times,
Right.
I'm just throwing that out arbitrarily, 10 times. Why is it that you only remember one past life,
If any. Yeah. No, I don't know.
Why can't you bring back the memories from those other past lives?
That's what I'm see for me, again, in the human form, I sit here and I go like, well, what freaking good does it do for me to come back if I can't remember what the stuff I did last time? How am I just doing it over and over again, screwing up? But then, so the other side of that coin is, well, your soul is aware of it. So when it comes back the next time, it has a plan for itself. God's plan, whatever the hell. So your path is not predestined, but it is sort of chosen in that you have things you're trying to accomplish in each life. These are just theories that have been shared in my religious experience. And that, again, sort of makes sense to me and helps me deal with how irritated I was as a teenager. Like, I didn't ask to friggin' be here. So how can you say that I have something to do with it? But in that plan, in that religion, you are part of your existence, and it's intentional. Your soul is part of that intent. So, but this idea that like, so I'm supposed to be the one who came up with this stupid ass plan, but I don't get to know about it till later. That sucks. And it does. It sucks. But if that's a reality, it answers the question. You don't get the information because then you don't do things right if you have the information. It's the end of this life that you kind of get a little download. Here's all what we've collected so far. What do we need to do now? Well, to finish our little puzzle, we've got to go do this and this and this. You've got to be a whatever. You've got to be a whatever the next experience is that your soul wants to gain for its totality of being. That's your next life. So you're aware of it going in, but as soon as you hit the rock, you hit the ground, boom, you're running, you lost your information, you're wiped clean. Or because it is not necessarily perfect, sometimes you retain some of it.
Well, if you notice I don't know how many people believe in hypnosis. I'm not big into it myself, but if you go into regressive hypnosis where people go under and suddenly they remember something from, I don't know, 50 years, 100 years, suddenly somebody thinks they're Napoleon or something. I don't know. But as far as I know, most regressive hypnosis fails.
Yeah.
And it's not, and I'm not even saying it's a gimmick. I just don't think it works. I don't think you can pull information out of a person like that. I think you could be born with it to a point,
Right.
and run with it for a short time. But I don't think you can't wait 20 years and then put you under hypnosis and find out that you were Cleopatra.
Right. That's sort of, and that falls within the same place where I'm at with, like, that's just stupid and there's no utility to it.
Right.
And it doesn't make any sense to me that
Agreed.
why would you have the ability to yank somebody's information out of them? And how the hell would we know how to do that? We wouldn't, because it doesn't serve any purpose.
Well, yeah, it doesn't. But actually, I came across it on YouTube one time.
Is it me?
No, but there
Damn
was
it.
a show, and I don't know if it ever actually made it onto one of the networks, but you can find pretty much all of them on YouTube. But it is past life regression, where it is a hypnotist that takes people back to their past lives. And I say that plural.
Yeah.
Because he's not just visiting one life, he's visiting several of their past lives and having them tell the stories back. What makes it kind of interesting.
Oh, is it like a documentary thing?
It's just an hour show, so there's different people that he goes through.
But are they're actors, or these are?
No, they're real people.
Oh, this is a guy hypnotizing people. In
Yeah. And then
okay.
after he does that, he records the session, and then he goes and digs back into history where they're saying where they.
Oh, gotcha. Verifying the
Yeah.
information
And in a few of the cases, he comes up with some pretty good, evidence that, the stories they were telling could have actually been them.
And are they just free forming their thing, or is he guiding them through it?
Well, it's hypnosis. So,
Yeah.
he just says, tell me where you're at, what are you looking at? What's going on around you, kind of thing.
That's cool.
And it's just called, what is it called?
It's called The Mentalist.
This is season 1, episode 1. Yeah. Her past life reveals them. Yeah. Blah,
No,
blah.
that's pretty cool.
Oh, Who Was I is what it's called.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, again, I'm not
legit.
saying that it's impossible for these people to go back into other lives. I'm just saying that, to me, if you're going to believe in remembering anything, it would be as a young child when you first come back into the world. You would hold on to some memories, and eventually they would leave you. Whereas a person 30 or 40 years older, you're going to bring back, I don't know, 100 years, and suddenly they remember something. I'm more skeptical of that. And hypnosis in itself, and I know I'm not knocking it because some of it works. Okay. I'm telling you that right now. Some of it works, but I'm not knocking it. But to me, it's more of a show than anything else.
Mm-hmm. And that's probably it. I'm sure.
Well, there's
I'm not saying I believe it.
There's proof of that.
Line, hook, and sinker and all that. But yeah. So, but if the stories he's telling, with his history research and all that, digs up some of the stuff.
I think that's cool. I think it's really cool.
Like, well, maybe.
Well, and then again, I don't discount any of this stuff as being false. It's just it doesn't sit well with the way that my brain works because I don't see any utility in it. I see it as like all that does is confuse the friggin' issue. Like, oh, good, now I know that I lived in Virginia and was a friggin' cobbler. It's like, well, what would he freaking do? What am I supposed to do with that? How does that help me here? Now I'm just more confused because the life I'm living, am I supposed to have some destination or purpose? That to me has always been the heaviest thing people put on you of like, no, well, you're here for a reason. Well, neat. I wish I knew what the hell it was. And I sure hope I'm doing it. Like, am I doing it? Is just living a normal, decent life good enough? Or am I supposed to be accomplishing something bigger? I don't know. But there feels like there's pressure there. So I don't want to know about past lives. I don't want to have any of that stuff that's just deep seated in me. Like I know for a fact that I was a pilot and I did this really great stuff. What good does that do me?
See, it would be okay if you were a pilot or a cobbler, but most of these people, when they get brought back, so to speak, to another lifetime, they're like Jesse James.
Yeah. And now you work at Foot Locker.
George Washington.
You're a referee at Foot Locker
Florence
now.
Nightingale. I
Right.
mean, it's never a cobbler.
Right.
No, it's not. It's some great grandiose person in history, and now you work at Kmart. You know what I mean? Making $6 an hour, and your freaking husband hates you, and your kids are jerks. It's like, whoop-de-doo. Again, I don't see any utility in it. And it's almost comical to the degree that like I was hypnotized and I found out that I was Napoleon. Oh, well, wow. Cool. That probably feels better than just working at PetSmart, doesn't it? Like, I don't know.
So anyway, we agree. I think we do anyway.
I think we
which is
probably do.
unusual for you and I, but we agree that as far as reincarnation goes, it's more plausible to think maybe a baby could hold some memory for a few years of a past life. But when you start going into some of this other stuff, it gets a little bit more questionable.
Oh, yeah.
Am I right with
I
that?
100% agree with you there. And then now whether or not why that is, maybe where we would disagree more than anything, because I believe that the less believable thing of an older person bringing that back to me has more to do with just how awful humans can be. That the intention is, that's not like, oh, I really had this memory. It'd be like, yeah, because the one thing I can pretty much say, I think I'm willing to say is not a fact. Does it count as a fact? You can't be hypnotized if you don't want to be hypnotized.
Mhm.
I don't know that there's ever a case of somebody being forcefully
No,
hypnotized,
I don't think so.
because you have to be open to it. So the idea that once you're open to that you can make some memories that necessarily were or weren't, I don't know.
Mhm.
And so when they find those ones that are verifiable through historical records and stuff, that puts a little glitch in the matrix, because it's like, now how in the hell did they just completely fabricate something and it happens to be that it coincides with the one of billions of people that have come and gone from this earth? Possibly, but it's also just as likely that they actually were that person.
Yeah.
So who the hell knows? It's a big fun Ferris wheel.
It is. It is a big fun Ferris wheel.
I love that kind of neat stuff, though. I mean, it fascinates me. I'm glad it hasn't happened to me personally, because I don't know what the hell I do with it, but I think that can drive you. It could drive you nuts.
This could have easily been a 2-hour segment.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we could talk about this shit for weeks, man. Because again, there's no real end to it.
Right.
There's no definitive answers until one or both of us get so fed up and stuck in what we're saying that we decide we need to fight or kill each other, which is where it goes.
Too old for that.
But you know what I mean? That's the real crazy part. And I think the thing that puts a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth about religion is that's the end game with it. Is like, once you get so steadfast and dug in on your point, my point of view, this is the way I know it is. I know it is. I know it is.
Mhm.
You don't really, but faith and belief can push you to that level of sort of toxic behavior where now you're willing to fight with somebody or literally kill somebody because they disagree with something that neither of you can prove.
But if you're getting to that point, then you're not following your religion.
I agree with you
Because
wholeheartedly.
If you look at any religion out there, now there may be one that I'm not aware of.
You can say it.
But
Go ahead, say it.
But I'm saying religions out there don't teach hate, kill, stuff like that because you disagree with them on anything. It's the people that envelop this religion and embrace it that get so, like you said, set in their way,
Right.
that they become, just thick-headed, and anything you say is wrong.
Right.
And we notice that in politics too, but
These are creations of men.
yeah,
And religion, like it or not, whatever the theology may be or the doctrine may be, religions as they are organized and maintained by human beings, by men that are fallible and capable of all these awful things. So it makes sense that that's where they go. But I'm right, you're wrong, and I will kill you if you disagree to the first extent. So it's bad because that is where it does the moral fabric, if you want to say, of society does deteriorate, because as those people become more prevalent in their respective religions or ideologies, it chips away at all those people who are just trying to do decent things and live decent lives, because they're like, I don't want to be associated with that crap. That guy's insane.
Right.
But it's like, we used to go to the same building together and we used to enjoy Sundays together. And now, like, he's a freaking idiot, clearly. And I don't want to be associated with that. So what do? Now you abandon your faith, you abandon what you believe because that guy took it way too far. I mean, that's tough.
you managed to get back on it, didn't you?
It's a big deal, man.
Well, it's a good point, because I don't think the origin of any religion, and I could be wrong, it was meant with malice. I don't think it ever was.
never
But
is
like
meant-
Jack says,
it develops that
when
way.
people get involved, they twist it to how they want to see it, and it gets off track to what it was originally intended for.
And I think I think the fact that we are so, as a society and people in general, we're so, like, I recognize how visceral this conversation is for you. that it's like, just shut up about this. We can talk about this stuff. And I think that has to do with it being considered taboo, and it shouldn't be.
No, I don't feel it's taboo.
But
At all.
the uncomfortableness, it's that people.
Well,
feel
I'm concerned
uncomfortable.
with the audience.
Yeah.
Maybe,
The audience are people too, though, and I'm sure
Yes.
that all of them have skin in this game.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure they do. They do have skin in the game. But I'm just simply saying that it's kind of like it's an opinion, and it's a
Absolutely.
feeling that you have because somebody else has faith doesn't make them wrong.
No,
It
absolutely
does
not.
make them wrong if they're so stubborn that they don't want to hear your side of the story.
Right.
Yes, but being someone of faith doesn't make you wrong, and
course
just
not.
and being someone that doesn't have faith doesn't make you wrong. It's all what's in your heart and what you feel.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, if you're going to argue with somebody over religion, you're making a big mistake because you can't win, no matter who it is. You
Right.
cannot win, and that's not why we're here. We're talking about reincarnation. Remember,
Well,
Jack?
now you need to talk about your books
Yes.
because we're out of time. So
Okay.
we definitely need
Which
to talk
is-
about.
I don't need to really, but if you want, no, I did bring my books. There's a lot of good books out there for reincarnation and time travel. You can go on Amazon.com, Barnes and Noble, any of those book sites. There's a whole slew of books. I just happen to write a couple myself. And if you're interested, fine. If you're not, fine too. But Twice Upon a Time is basically a time travel story. And being we're running out of time, I can't do much of a synopsis, but I will tell you it's about an elderly couple that travel back in time, and it's quite unique. They find out that life is not as easy to get by, even with a second chance. Soul Juby Walker is the most recent one I have written. It's about reincarnation. It's about a 15-year-old boy that is convinced that he's a reincarnation of a soldier from World War II, but it's much deeper than that. He is really being plagued by this spirit, and it's really getting to him and his family. So he goes on a search for the truth, and that's kind of what the story's about. It's called Soul of Juby Walker. It's not out in print until October 19th, but it's available on ebook right now. And the third one, if you like historical fiction and you're not too sensitive, this is my first book, Butterfly Wish. It has nothing to do with paranormal and has nothing to do with
I'll
time
explain the
travel,
two sensitive things.
but it's definitely a bit sensitive. So if you like historical fiction, that's your book. Anyway, and like I said, there's a lot of books out there. There's a lot of good authors out there. So, whatever you want to do.
That's awesome, man.
It's all found on Amazon.
I'm tempted now to read that other one because I told him I was reading the Twice Upon a Time, and I don't read very often. So
He was shocked at the beginning.
I was shocked. I was like, this is some sexy stuff going on here. And he's like, there's nothing that bad in there. And then he's, I guess there's that one in the beginning. So I realized that it's weird because the stuff I can watch on TV is awful. But for whatever reason, you write it down and you give nice descriptive words, and how much of a picture literature
Reading
paints.
paints.
Yeah.
Right.
You forget that, when they just want to see a car or a hot looking girl, they just show it.
Right.
But when you have no pictures and it's all words giving you that same image,
It's a whole different.
it's an art form that's just that my brain wasn't ready for because it's all making it up in my head. I'm going like, good gracious. So if nothing else, I hope you understand that it's a compliment that
No, I do.
the depth of your writing and the
I
detail of
agree.
your writing
I
was
appreciate it.
intense.
Thank
Was
you.
intense.
Thank you.
You have to go check it out. Whoop. Keep
What'd
doing
you
that. We
do?
keep doing some weird stuff there.
We
happening.
doubled you.
And then you also do a show. You also do your own podcast, which is up here, Bios to Books, where you interview self-published authors trying to make a name for themselves and trying to get their works out there.
Right.
We've had some paranormal people on there.
Oh,
We
yeah.
had Patty Negri on there,
Yeah.
and just recently Deb Branding. So they were good interviews. So go check it out if you get a chance. Also check out our other shows that we have too. We got The Truth About Beer on Tuesday nights, and hopefully we could do a live wiki session. That would be cool.
That would be very
That'd
cool.
be fun.
I heard of two of those. What are the other ones?
Oh, you want
Yeah,
to see
what the hell?
We got Paranormal Partners, which Lindsay and I do every other Sunday,
Never heard of it.
where we talk to paranormal partners and kind of get to know them on a personal level, not just a investigative level. So that the evidence comes out on The Truth About Beer. You learn about the personal side of them on Paranormal Partners. So it's a good kind of balance, I think.
Interesting.
And then got
I'm not aware of that.
my channel, Highway to Your Health, which kind of talks about my health journey, which I've been dropping the ball on lately because
Nice.
I'm busy doing other things. And then completely not paranormal related, a new show that we started doing Fridays, just because I like to get shit out there that's on people's minds, and things that I think we need to come together, kind of like Jack
religion.
said. We really don't talk about religion, but
I
it is a
know, why
lot.
would
It
you?
is politically heavy, I think.
Jack would be a perfect guest for that show.
He would
As
be.
long as it's a
We
6-hour
definitely
open
put him
forum, we're good. Bring
It's
your cookies.
it's a touchy show for people because some people are very passionate about the way they feel, but I think it's important to find an avenue where we can come together and talk about those difficult topics and,
It's-
and try
it
to
can
find
be-
some common ground.
It can be really hard to hear other people.
It is, but I think it's important, and I think we stress on that show that you got to come with facts. Don't just come with me, you're an asshole because you believe a certain way. you
Right.
know?
Unless that happens to be the truth.
Right, exactly. But it was our friends John and Wendy were kind of the brainchild of that show. They wanted to put their own show together. Tried an episode, realized how difficult it was to put an episode together. So
You're like, I already got this stuff.
Reach-
We can do this. We got
reached
this.
out to our
We
help
got
to
this.
kind of put it together, and it's evolved into what I think is a pretty decent show. So check that out. It is on Rumble mostly. We try to stay off of YouTube just because of the topics that we do talk about. We would definitely get kicked off easily. So yeah, check that out if you get a chance. Please go subscribe to all those channels too, because it's really important. We need your support. It helps us out when you subscribe. It opens us up to more audiences. And just like Parapalooza, we plan to continue Parapalooza.
Yeah, and you need to add Parapalooza to that.
I do.
Yeah, because I found out. I just found out today that it's a whole separate thing. I'm like, am I to get no notifications about this shit? I got an email about it, but no notifications on
Yep.
YouTube. It's so crazy.
Well, Parapalooza is brought to you by The Truth About Beer and
Mhm.
RCJ Productions. So yeah, we'll have to add that to the list. Definitely. And
Yeah.
please go subscribe. 6 months from now, we're looking at what, March would be the next one?
I believe so.
I believe so.
Wow.
So if you're interested in being a part of Parapalooza, reach out to us. We'd love to have you on. As you can see, we can have you on if you're an author. We can have you on if you're an investigator. No matter what it is in the paranormal field, we'd love to have some UFO stuff on
Yeah.
eventually. So we had Tim on the first time around talking about his experiences, but we know there's a lot more experiences out there. So we'd love to get you on the show. So reach out to us if you can. Yeah.
Do it.
Do it. You want to do it.
Anything
Do it
closing you
now.
want to say there, Joey?
I just want to thank everybody that's joined us over the last 2 days because it's been awesome.
It's been fun. Look forward to the
Yeah.
next one.
I joined y'all from my couch yesterday, but I was here for the whole thing.
So,
Mhm.
all right. So that's going to do it for us. You guys got anything in closing you
No.
want to say?
I want to see the comments.
You did see comments.
I want to see all of them.
I've been putting them up there.
I can't see that far away.
Oh, you can't?
You
No, I
can-
just keep seeing that
So,
rotten best. No,
you can read them later. They're
that's
right
what.
there.
Well, that's what I want to do. I wanna-
Snowflakes.
I don't know if it gets rid of them.
Who's a
Get rid of
badass? They're saying you're a badass, Dad.
Not really. Not really.
Make it another hour. What, this topic? Make it another hour. We'll revisit that on Truth About Beer again. Then
Yeah.
we'll make it an actual episode, right? Instead of a live thing, we'll record it as an episode.
Yeah, I
talking
mean,
about
well,
reincarnation.
No,
We still have things to do
No.
live.
I think
but,
we're done.
yeah.
Jack's like, I don't want to talk about this again.
Hey, yeah, I don't. I'll talk about it all day, but I'm just gonna beat the hell out of it. Just beat the dead horse.
Oh.
Because I can't see.
Like
that.
you said, nobody's right, nobody's wrong. It's all
Well,
it's
no,
all
no,
really.
I didn't say that.
Yes, you did.
I'm right.
Putting words in there. I'm right, and you need to shut up.
Put a flag up. Throw my flag up.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining us for this Parapalooza. It's going to bring this one to a close, and we'll start planning for March.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
All right. Have a good night, everybody. We'll see you soon.
Thanks.